What do two principals really think about state testing? So let's start with the pros.
It's got to be something.
Actually, there are some pros for state testing. Our schools in the state of Indiana need to be accredited, and by having state testing, this is one way for them to follow this procedure.
And that goes for public or private schools. If you want to be accredited, you have to take the test. Another one is placement. We use the test scores for our advanced program at our school, and it helps us to determine and be part of the decision-making process along with teacher recommendation, grades, etc., etc.
We also need data. So we need to look at data, we need to look at different sources of information, and the state testing will give us that.
And state testing is used often for accountability. How is the school doing? And this is measurable and used for accountability, quantitative evidence.
And of course, we need to adhere to our standards. So as teachers, we all have that favorite lesson and unit that we love to teach, and we could probably teach it all year. But unfortunately, with the state standards, we can't do that. So we have to follow those guidelines and have the students experience all of those lessons.
Good points. So we talked about the pros of state testing, high stakes testing, and now we're going to talk a little bit about the cons. And I'll start with my story, and feel free to jump in, Jackie. But the most extreme case that I can remember happened several years ago when we were giving the test, and for whatever reason, the state of Indiana goofed up. They put fourth grade standards on the third grade test, and it was mayhem throughout the state. We had kids freaking out during the test. In my school, I had kids putting their heads down and crying, totally stressed, because what they were trying to do was do their best. High achievers trying to do their best, and suddenly they turned a page and the next page looked like Chinese. They weren't prepared, they weren't taught the materials, and it was just a very stressful situation throughout the entire state of Indiana. I can remember it like it was yesterday. Kids went home stressed out, crying, parents were upset about it, and it was a short time later, the state said, oh, wait a minute, we goofed up. We put fourth grade standards on the third grade test.
And I agree. And if I remember correctly, too, with the administration, we try to support our teachers in this stressful time because they are really stressed by giving the test. They have to follow all these guidelines. They have to go all this training. And then to find something out like that was devastating. And they're trying to console the students, and they're trying to make sense out of it. And they're all upset as well. And as administrators, we're trying to calm them down. And it just was a very, very difficult situation.
That was one situation. But overall, in general, teachers, parents, kids, teachers probably feel this more than anybody. They feel they're being judged by these test scores. And it is just a very stressful situation all the way around. Kudos to the teachers for dealing with it. We put them through the ringer during these state testing times.
And one of the things that we, at least at my school, the testing schedule is fluid, and it has to be because, of course, we have students that don't come to school. We have students that get sick and have to go home. Then we have makeups, and we have all of these things that are going on. So already that in itself creates a very stressful situation. So these next couple of weeks, we just got to get through them together and work as a team.
Yeah, I guess another con that always seems to bother me, whenever the test scores are published, there's always this misinterpretation of data. People would see that comparison from last year to current year. Kids went in, say, just pick a grade, fourth grade, their test scores the year before were really great, and the next year they were just okay. They went down by a couple of points. And people would say, well, what happened in fourth grade at your school? The scores went down. Well, it's a whole different group of kids. That was, the group of kids who did really well are now in fifth grade. And perhaps they are very good test takers. And perhaps the next group that's currently in fourth grade, they might be talented in lots of other areas and not quite as good in test grade scores. The teacher probably worked even harder that year preparing those kids, but some people interpret that, well, Mrs. So-and-so must be slacking lately because those scores went down. Well, it's just two different groups of kids. That's what it is.
And I agree. And if we learned anything from COVID, we now know that as teachers, we've had to kind of reinvent ourselves. We have to teach our students in a different way because COVID changed us all.
It did. Changed everything.
And we have to now readjust and shift. And so we can't really look at that data in that way, because then we're never going to gain anything. We have to move forward, but we can't do it that way, like you were saying, Tom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How about teaching to the test?
Yeah, that's another one. So, the lack of creativity. As teachers, we want to be creative. I mean, that's the whole reason we're in it. Not because we want to be given, a manual and say, okay, this is exactly what you're going to say. This is exactly how you're going to say it. And this is what the kids have to do. We give them the framework, but then it's up to them. I mean, they're performers, and it's amazing what we see in our classrooms. Oh, yeah. And it's the joy of teaching. So state testing kind of, takes that away from some of our teachers, and it really puts a stress on them.
It does. It dictates the pace and the scope, and those teachers who have particular talents in certain areas, they're not able to go as in depth in those areas because they've got to get to all of the material that's going to be tested on. Another one that I'd like to bring up is not very pleasant to talk about. It's cheating. Let me tell you a little story, and it's a personal story. I remember in fourth grade, my fourth grade teacher pulled me and about 8 kids out of the class around the time for state testing. Kids, take your booklets, bring your pencil, follow me. We're going to the teacher's lounge. And I remember it was a big deal as a fourth grader going into the teacher's lounge. And back in those days in like 1980 or so, it was kind of like a lounge. There were couches everywhere. It looked like a nice place to hang out, but it reeked of smoke. Oh, it was terrible. Anyway, us kids were in there, and our teacher said, okay, open your booklets, your answer sheets. The answer to number 1 is D. The answer to number 2 is C. So on and so forth. Okay, number 12, you guys do on your own. And we went through the whole booklet. As a kid in fourth grade, you don't really know what's going on or how it's happening. And I don't even know if the teacher did that for the whole class or what. But if that was happening way back in 1980, don't think it hasn't happened recently. We see articles in the newspaper about school districts in certain areas getting busted for cheating. Now, I'm hoping there's less of that now that we're doing everything electronically. But if there's a way to do it, I'm sure somebody's going to figure it out.
Right, and that's unfortunate because it doesn't help the student. It doesn't help, of course, as the teachers or any of the school district. But I think now with the fact that the training is so specific on the TA and then, of course, like the proctor, the person that's there. So there's always people in the room that have to be in the room. So that hopefully is not happening. But unfortunately, like you said, we do see it in the newspaper that somebody's cheating.
Yeah, and it just kind of speaks to the pressure that's on our shoulders to perform well. Okay, hey, we don't want to just leave it at the cons and talk about negativity. Let's finish with a couple ways that we've thought of that the state might improve testing. And one of the things I thought of was a pre and post test. Right now, we do state testing after spring break. We're in the middle of April, and that in the springtime, it would be nice because once you get that data back, what do we have? Like a couple weeks of school left? What are you going to do with it? It would be nice if the state could devise a way to test in the fall and test in the spring, compare the data, and look for improvement. And that way you're also testing the same group of kids for the most part. A lot of schools, there's a lot of migration, and by the time you're done testing in the spring, by the time the kids roll in and show up in the fall, 30% of the kids might be totally different kids. And what do you do with those kids if you don't have good data on them? So a fall and a spring would make sense. That would also allow us, we've all thought of that, and we've all engaged with another company that does that. and maybe that would allow us to reduce the amount of testing by not engaging with that other company because there was such a need. That's why we went with that other company. I think everybody around the whole state pretty much does it. So that's just one idea.
Going with you on that, I think using all of that data, like we spoke about earlier, to improve our schools. So not to punish us with the data and, for example, label us as a failing school. I mean, after all of that stress and after all that we do, and then to get these reports that we're a failing school, that just really puts us really down, and we feel like, well, what did we do then? What did we accomplish?
Yeah, some of the teachers in those schools are working harder than anybody else and throughout the entire state, as putting their heart and soul into it, and to get a label as a failing school, or for someone to see that data, whether there's a label associated with it or not, and consider that school a failure, very disheartening. So if you're a parent watching this video and you're wondering, okay, how do these two principals approach it at their schools? I kind of downplayed a little bit, to be honest with you. At one of my former schools, oh my goodness, we made a big deal. We made assemblies, songs. I even ran around the school during an assembly like a fool in a mascot costume with a big I for I-step on my chest and trying to get the kids hyped up about the test. At my school, I try to just downplay it. I don't want kids stressed out about the test. I do all the normal things. I encourage their parents to feed them a good breakfast, good night of sleep, and I just basically tell our kids to do their best, and it's an opportunity for them to show how much they've learned. And I really like to emphasize, well, hey, here we are in April. You've learned so much throughout the course of the school year. Just do your best, and you'll be representing yourself, your family, and your school, and leave it at that without a big circus show.
And you mentioned those things, and at my school, it's what, the opposite. So we did put on an assembly. We do encourage the kids and have a celebration, and we try to get them, pumped up and eager for the test, because it's just a different group of students. So you just have to know your school community. And so we want them to be excited about it, because many times they aren't excited about it. And so we need that from them. We need that energy from them. We need them to see that we're excited about it, so that they can be excited about it too.
Also, they try hard and do their best. I think, we have two different communities, and I try my best to provide what my community needs, and you try to do the same.
Yes, absolutely. And as parents, of our children, when they go through state testing, I know that ours, was doing that this week, and she was getting up early, and she was, she was stressed. She's like, I have this today, and I really want to do well. And all I kept telling her was, just do your best. That's all we ask for, and that's all. I don't want you to be, upset about it. Just finish and just try to do what you can. And I tell the same thing to my parents, and many times some of my parents don't even understand the state testing, and I have to explain that to them, and they just say that it's good that somebody can see it from a parent perspective as well.
Mm-hmm. And, we rambled on quite a bit. We've hit a lot of bullet points. I'm sure we forgot some points, so feel free to make a comment down below. Tell us, hey, what did you get right? What did you get wrong? What did you leave out? Let us know. I think as a community, one of the reasons we made this channel is not only for our own entertainment, but to start a dialogue with folks that are stakeholders. Whether you're a parent or an administrator or a teacher, I think solving problems will take place by communication. So thanks for watching us communicate with you, and we look forward to having that be a two-way street with your comments.
If you watched to this point, hopefully you enjoy the video, and make sure that you hit the like button. And we'll see you next time.